Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. We begin with a surprise attack. In the 2024 elections, the powerful conservative group Club for Growth has launched television ads hoping to derail Mitch Daniels' Senate campaign before it even begins.
After 50 years in big government, big pharma, and big academia, Mitch Daniels forgot how to fight. An old guard Republican clinging to the old ways of the bad old days.
Now, the ad started this weekend, even though Daniels still has not publicly announced if he's running. So why target him now? Our Garrett Berquist has the exclusive interview with the group's president.
Let's welcome in Club for Growth President David McIntosh. David, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Garrett.
So, David, Mitch Daniels has not made any formal moves toward launching a campaign. Why go after him now?
Garrett, one of the things we wanted to do was let Hoosiers know what the choice is going to be in this Senate race. Mitch has signaled he is thinking about it and contemplating it. So we decided it's important for everybody to know there's a lot at stake here, and there's a big contrast. Mitch's style of politics is outdated now in Washington. You know, he was part of the Republican effort that grew entitlements. He supported tax increases. Those are the problems that we're now dealing with and wrestling with. So we need newer, younger leadership that will stand up and fight against the pressures in Washington to spend more and tax more.
What is it specifically about Mitch Daniels, the man or his record, that you believe makes him unfit for office?
I think it's just time for new leadership in Indiana. And, you know, a lot of people agree with us on that. The day we announced the ad, we received $5 million in contributions towards this effort to support a conservative. And we plan to spend 8 figures in this race because I think Indiana now has an opportunity to get a real solid, strong conservative here in Washington.
Bellwether Research released a poll in December that showed Daniels had a clear lead over other potential Republican Senate contenders. He's still clearly very popular among Indiana voters. Do you worry at all this might cause backlash and actually lead to more support for Daniels?
I saw that poll. It reminded me somewhat of North Carolina last cycle, where a former governor was running against a young, new Republican congressman, Ted Budd. Ted eventually won that race because people wanted new leadership that was principled and stood up for conservatives.
What about the risk that this divides Republicans when the chips go down in November of 24 and provides an opening for Democrats?
You know, Garrett, that's always a good question. I think Republicans know once we decide who we want as our nominee, we come together because the contrast is so great between the Democrats here in Washington. You know, they're now run by the far left progressive in their party, and even a more moderate Democrat ends up voting with them 95, 98% of the time. So I think we'll be okay in the fall. All the candidates that are thinking about running all can run good races and win. So I think we're in good shape.
Mitch Daniels was one of your biggest supporters when you ran for governor in 2000. He worked on your campaign. Why go after a former ally in this way on a personal note?
You know, and it's not personal. What it is basically a message that it's time for somebody new, somebody young, that the old style of Republican politics to go along with the Democrats, increase spending, propose tax increases, that's no longer what we need in Washington. So it's more about the policies and what the right direction is.
Is there anyone in particular you would like to see in that Senate seat, and will Club for Growth be supporting them?
Of the people that have said they're looking at it and are interested, we supported Jim Banks when he ran for Congress. He has a great record, a really high score on our scorecard. And so I hope he decides to run. I think he'd be a great candidate.
While we're on the subject of 2024, do you plan to support anyone in the governor's race?
We haven't looked at that one yet. We now do endorse governor's candidates. Mike Braun, who's running, has a really good record as a senator, and I think could be a really good governor. But honestly, Garrett, we haven't taken a real close look at that one.
Are there any other 2024 races where you're starting ad campaigns this early in the cycle?
This is the first ad campaign for us this cycle, and it's right out the door because Indiana is such an important state and an important race with an open seat for Senate. We'll probably look at several other races around the country, but this is the first one. And as a Hoosier, it's near and dear to my heart.
We had several situations in 2022 where a deeply conservative candidate won the primary, but then lost the general election because they were not able to win over enough voters to win the general election. Are you considering that as you weigh your ad campaigns for 24, including this one?
Garrett, I think that's an important factor. I would point again to North Carolina, where we had a strong conservative, Ted Budd, who was able to rally the Republicans and independents and win that race. Another race that we ran was Mike Lee up against a more moderate independent who got the Democrat support as well. There were a couple races where it came close, and it wasn't because they were too conservative. I think a lot of it was the fact that Donald Trump had endorsed them, and that energized the Democrats. So we're hoping that in 24 we'll move beyond that, and that won't be a factor. I think the candidates like Jim Banks, Mitch Daniels, both of them could win in the general election. It's more a question about who we want to represent us in Washington now, the old way or the new way.
Has the Republican Party moved beyond someone of the type of Mitch Daniels?
I think we've seen that in the last 4 or 6 years. The Republicans are tired of people who are too easily swayed to go along with the Democrats. They realize we have to undo a lot of the spending in Washington. We have to stop the progress that they're trying to do to turn us into a more socialist country. That's a different kind of Republican that's willing to stand up and fight against that versus somebody who might put together all the pieces, cut a deal with the Democrats, spend for some things that we like and spend for things that they like. Republicans are tired of that, and they want someone new and energetic who will demonstrate that they're going to fight.
David McIntosh is the president of Club for Growth. David, thank you for joining us today.
Great to be with you.
Good conversation there. Coming up, supporters of Mitch Daniels react to the Club for Growth ad campaign.
Welcome back to All Indiana Politics. I want to bring in Christy Luther Hurst with the group Frugal Hoosiers for Mitch. Christy, are you surprised that the Club for Growth took out an attack ad this early?
I mean, who knows why they, pick the timing that they pick. But seeing the ad for the first time myself today, my first thought was like, those scenes of tourists who try to take selfies with bison, like that's never going to end well for the tourist. And then my second thought was like, what's this guy got against motorcycles?
Your group has been trying to build up support for a potential Daniels candidacy for some months. Does this ad change the dynamics of the race for you?
No, we've always been our target audience is one. And that's just, continuing to encourage Mitch to run for governor, and we're now Senate.
Has your group been able to speak with Mitch Daniels in the past few weeks? Does he plan to run for any office in 2024?
Nope, haven't spoken with him. I hope he does run.
Christy Luther Hurst, thank you for talking to us.
You're welcome.
All right, coming up, we break down this week's top political headlines with Indiana's best political team coming up. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome back two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Ariel Brandy and Republican Whitley Yates. Good to see you both. Whitley, we'll start with you. That attack ad against Mitch Daniels, the Club for Growth is accusing Daniels of not being conservative enough. Daniels has a clear lead, Whitley, in the polls over any other potential Republican Senate candidates, as you very well know. Could this potentially backfire and lead to maybe even more support for him?
I'm going to be honest. I think it will. We haven't heard Mitch Daniels' name, mentioned politically in a really long time. Being the president of Purdue, I think that he's focused mainly on educational issues. And so now this kind of catapults him or springs him into the political limelight, increasing his name ID for those who didn't know him in a time where he hasn't even stated whether or not he's running yet.
Ariel, your thoughts on the ad?
Yeah, I agree with Whitley. I mean, it puts him back into the race where he's kind of been behind the scenes, really leading Purdue. And now it makes a conversation also, too, on are Republicans ready for someone who is actually moderate and conservative, or do they want more of the far right extremism that we've been seeing most recently? So I'm very interested to see how this ends up playing out, but I definitely can see Mitch jumping in the race and this being something that folks will want to pay attention to in the state of Indiana.
To that point, Ariel, does this potentially provide an opening for Democrats to maybe exploit?
I think it does. I think it will give voters an opportunity to really be able to see what they can get not only from Democrats, but also to see kind of this divisiveness that we've seen on the Republican side of the aisle. I mean, we've seen this really far-right extreme legislation, this culture wars, talking points happening. I think Mitch jumping into the race really does shift things for the state, but it also provides an opportunity for Democrats to really put up a really great candidate so that we can actually kind of bring back some of those Hoosier values into the folks that are deciding to run for office. So I do think that it opens up an opportunity for us as Democrats.
Whitley is smiling. Whitley, I know you want to get on this one. Does this help Democrats in your opinion?
No, I don't think this is an opening for Democrats at all. And actually, I don't think anyone who's even been rumored to announce is considered far right. The truth is, this is a swampy DC pact that is pushing this stuff out there. And Hoosiers do not need anyone else tainting or contaminating their vision or their view of Hoosier elected leaders, because we have a bench of Republican talent that has consistently provided for Hoosiers, as we can tell each and every time we go to the ballot box. So I wouldn't say this is opening up any space for the Democrats, but more or less bringing name ID and name recognition to someone who maybe wasn't even thought of before this.
So, Whitley, if I'm hearing you right, are you saying the swamp's coming in to kind of change this election?
I think that they're creeping in slowly but surely, and we need to make sure that we keep them out of the heartland.
Fair enough. We'll move on to the next topic here. State lawmakers, rather, as you very well know, just wrapped up their first week of the session. The governor, in his State of the State address, ladies, again called for major investments in public health, public education. He also called for an end to textbook fees. Republican leaders won't commit to one way or another on those items. Whitley, how much of the governor's agenda stands a chance, particularly in a very conservative state Senate?
Yeah, so I think that the State of the State address was, I'm going to be honest, it was probably one of the best that we've heard thus far. I think a lot of the solutions and the top lines of his agenda need definitely to be pushed. The truth of the matter is, though, in the Republican supermajority, we have this idea that it's freedom of thought and representing the ideas of the constituency is what's most important. And right now, coming off the back of inflation that we're still dealing with, the current administration not necessarily handling things well, our dollar's not going very far these days. I think the governor is looking to give Hoosiers a reprieve, while I think that the state legislators are kind of listening and want to focus on what their constituents say is important.
Ariel, I have a very specific question for you, but before I get to it, I want to get your take on the State of the State from this past week.
Yeah, so I had the honor to be able to kind of do a post-analysis of the State of the State after Holcomb had spoken, and I thought that it really aligned a lot with the Democratic values, honestly. These were things that Democrats have been pushing for a very long time, specifically around textbook fees being forgiven for our students, and also too thinking about how we view our education system, rising teacher pay, making sure that our teachers are compensated properly. I really loved the support of Martin University and looking at how that goes. My biggest concern, I guess, is making sure that the administration really has the right folks at the table when they're having these conversations, specifically making sure that the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus is a part of this, our Latino legislators, because if we're going to focus on making sure that these issues are equitable, I hope that we have the right folks at the table working alongside the governor and our state legislators on the GOP side to make sure that we can get this stuff done.
So as you mentioned, Ariel, Democrats have been pushing for a lot of these ideas over the years. Does Holcomb's speech maybe suggest a change in the overall attitude towards health and education spending?
I think so. I don't think that it goes as far as it should. I do think that we should definitely be looking into pregnancy accommodations in the workplace. And then also making sure that when we're looking at public safety, I know we just became a state where you can have a gun without having a permit. I mean, when we're looking at the mass shootings that are happening in our schools, it's something to consider. But I do think that we are definitely making inroads in being able to work in bipartisan ways together. And I really hope that legislators take that seriously this time around. Leader Phil Giaquinta said it best. We have an opportunity, whether it's Democrats, Republicans, our state legislator, or our governor. We just all need to roll up our sleeves and really get the work done. And I hope that we can do that this legislative cycle.
Whitley, does this suggest that maybe a shift in ideology for Republicans in this state?
I don't think so. And I actually find it very interesting how the Democrats are attempting to frame this. The truth is that Republicans have supported our education system year over year, specifically when it comes to putting dollars behind supporting education, specifically healthcare. They have spent hundreds of millions of dollars supporting healthcare initiatives. So this is a lot of what we've already had and already have been seeing. So I find it interesting that they're attempting to paint it as something when this is who we are and who we have been consistently as a party, supporting education, specifically voucher and school choice, as well as supporting healthcare initiatives to get Indiana on track and in a better position to support the life of the child and the mother.
Ariel, you want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they may have been the same ideals, but we haven't really worked together to make sure they get done. I mean, we've seen a lot of really extreme legislation that's come out of our state house. And when you're talking about the health of mother and children, I mean, also not thinking about the likelihood of this abortion ban that's going to be coming, hopefully decided later on this week. I mean, that plays a part in our women and people who decide to be mothers being able to have a say in that. There was no mention of the abortion ban in his address, which I think is very telling as to where we lie as a state when it comes to the health care of women and being able to make a choice on whether or not they want to become mothers. But you look at the quality of life for the state of Indiana, and the governor admitted it's not exactly where it needs to be.
Yeah.
We may be a state where they're toting, you know, we have the best to be able to be a small business in this state. But when you look at the quality of life, it's just not there. So I'm really hoping that we can figure out a way to work together this legislative cycle and not, you know, push each other to the side.
Yeah, the health data was eye-opening, to say the least.
Yeah.
Another note, though, on Thursday, ladies, I want to get to this as well. The state Supreme Court will hear arguments over whether the new abortion ban violates the right to privacy. This is the first of two lawsuits against the ban. Ariel, do you have any hope that this would maybe permanently block that ban?
You know, I really do have hope for this. I think that what we're going to be able to see is that government interference on women's healthcare decisions does not need to happen. This needs to be a decision between a childbearing person and their doctor to be able to decide whether or not is their choice. And what we're seeing with this ban is that it is infringing very much upon those rights that we should have as people in the state of Indiana. So I am hopeful that this block will happen and we'll be able to move forward to be able to have lawful and legal abortions in the state of Indiana.
Whitley, a similar question to you. How likely is the court to uphold the ban, in your opinion?
Yeah, I don't think that the court's going to uphold the ban. I think that Indiana has proven time and time again that it is a pro-life and a pro-livelihood state, and that we are going to protect the innocent and the unborn consistently, as well as give surrounding support to the mother and the child. We may not be a perfect state, and this is not a perfect union, but we are striving day in and day out to represent Hoosier ideals and to make sure we're attempting to do what's best for everyone so that we can all be better together.
I have a minute left. Republican lawmakers on a national level in some states now are saying that they want to ban abortion, rather, even in cases of rape or incest, and restrict access to contraception. Whitley, is this something that you want to see? Is this bad for the party?
I mean, that's not what's happening here in Indiana. I think we have a very solid law here that does allow for rape.
Do you think it will happen here, though?
Pardon me?
Do you think it will happen here?
No, I don't think it'll happen here at all.
Ariel?
I think that I will. I think that we are very much underestimating what legislators are thinking about when it comes to that, especially around contraception. I mean, that has been something that's been a topic of discussion for a couple of past legislature cycles. So I definitely think that we are not too far off from that. If this ban was near total, I don't think that we're too far away from them making these exceptions, you know, added a part to it. So
I think we have to remember that Indiana is one of the many Republican states that did not have a trigger law because they did want to hear from constituents and they did want to respect those that had the opportunity to speak. And so I don't see them listening and creating the legislation that was passed and then going back and doing something different.
I know you two are friends. You could probably talk about this offline. We're out of time, unfortunately. Always good to see you both, and we'll be back after the break. All right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday and every Sunday morning at 9:30. We'll also be watching the state Supreme Court as the justices hear arguments Thursday on the fate of Indiana's near total ban on abortion. Have a great rest of your weekend. We'll see you online at wishtv.com as well.